We're going to talk about disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief. Kenneth Doka was the first person to coin the term. He did that in 1985. And he said that disenfranchised grief is the pain of a significant loss that is not openly acknowledged or socially accepted. It is also known as grief that has no permission. It is shameful loss. It's unshared grief, squelched grief, okay? It's grief that insinuates that you do not have the right to mourn. This death, this loss is not valid. We're not going to recognize it. The definition comes from society, which goes back to a point that was made a little bit earlier. Society is where stigma begins. That's why you got to come out of the closet. You got to start telling people your story, what happened. The ones you don't just say, I lost my son. You finish the story. Okay, that's unfortunately our job. Often these types of deaths are so difficult that if left untreated, and now we're going past the 2 years, we can actually begin to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder. So disenfranchised grief is really, really, really serious stuff. Grief can immobilize us and stop us in our tracks, okay? That's the thing about grief. Let me give you a new picture. Types of death that are stigmatized. Suicide is a big one. That's the greatest obstacle to healing with regards to suicide is stigma. And like I said, so much of suicide also included the use of drugs and alcohol. Lots of overlap. And then, of course, we have drugs, alcohol, AIDS, deaths in the LGBT community, and the big one that's going on now is with the transgendered. They are getting killed in alleys and set up and just, oh, it's just horrid, horrid, horrid. Mental illness, people who die of schizophrenia and the parents, oh, my son was a little troubled. I haven't seen him in 15 years, but we're not going to tell you why and how I felt about that. There are a lot of the same issues. Abortion, miscarriage, a lot of guilt and shame for some people. Depends on your type of support system and what's coming at you. Fiance, not quite a spouse. And this is my favorite one, infidelity, the loss of a secret lover. You don't tell anybody. But is your heart broken? Well, maybe it should be because that wasn't nice what you were doing. Oh, stigma. Personally, stigma affects that person's experience of the grieving process. Military death. Well, you're fighting for your country, you signed up, you knew what you were getting yourself into. There is stigma associated with one of the things we work very, very, very hard on today's soldiers relative to Vietnam. Disenfranchised grief. This is what your journey looks like. That's concrete grief. And if stigmatized grieving process is not handled, there is, with task of mourning, there is not reorganization, adapting to the new environment, and connecting to the loved one again. We just stop, okay?